more than they should be. All right. So, I guess this works. Oh, yeah, there you go. Thank you very much. Thank you, by the way, for doing this. So, I guess we'll just start off and say thank you for coming. And yes, my name is Toby Proctor. I was the voice actor for, well, specifically Tuxedo Mask in Sailor Moon, and Darien, the Moonlight Knight, and Prince Darien. He had an ego problem, I think. But anyway, so I see some old faces here from Ontario. That's a long way to go. So good. All right. So, does anybody have any questions about Sailor Moon or the process of when we did and how we made it? Because it was a pretty interesting thing, and if not, I can tell you how it was done. It was pretty cool. So, anybody have any specific questions of Sailor Moon or anime? Go for it.
When someone described the concept of the show to you, how did it sound?
That's a good point. Okay, so you have to understand, when I auditioned for this, I didn't know what anime was. It was 1995, I think, and I was acting at the time, and just mostly on camera. And there was a woman who you all know without knowing was the director of Sailor Moon. She was the first English voice actress for Sailor Moon. And she was the director of Sailor Moon, but I didn't know this. And I was taking a microphone technique course from her. And she said, if working your reading, I think you could do like a really good, job at this career. And I'm like, oh, I don't know, I'm not really that great, whatever. So 2 weeks later, I get a call for an audition, and I do it. And I walk away, and my agent calls me and says, hey, congratulations, you got Sailor Moon. I'm like, that's great. What's Sailor Moon? And it turns out that it was this show, and I really had no idea what this was, especially back at that time. And it was just as the internet was just kind of waking on, turning on. I was going to say waking up, but turning on. And it was a really, really interesting thing to see, anime in itself, because I had no idea what this character was going to be or what the show was going to be about. And then it was later on that I was on a streetcar. I always tell the story because when I was in the streetcar, after recording, maybe about 6 months after the fact, I was in Toronto and I saw a little boy with a Tuxedo Mask backpack. And I freaked out because I didn't know it was going to be this big. Nobody did. Like all of us, when we recorded this, we were just like, I don't know, it's kind of fun. I guess there's a lot of screaming and there's a lot of rose throwing. And next thing you know, this thing went huge. And my friend Katie Griffin, who is the voice of Sailor Mars, she has a similar experience where she was training Kung Fu at the time, and she was on, I think it was Spadina Avenue in Toronto, and she went downstairs to this Kung Fu place, she was getting some stuff, and she turns her back, and she sees this shrine of Sailor Moon stuff. And so she starts grabbing everything she could and puts it on the counter, and she was like, I'm Sailor Moon, or I'm Sailor Mars, I'm Sailor Mars. And he's like, okay, crazy bones. So yeah, none of us knew what we were really getting into. And then now fast forward, I have to clear my throat for this, 30 years. 30 years now, the fact that we have been in the kind of public and pop culture lexicon is a pretty neat thing to see. So yeah, I had no idea what this was going to be like. It was pretty cool. And you had your hand up over there, buddy.
What made you get involved with Sailor Moon?
Well, I was just acting as a young guy, and and honestly, it was kind of by happenstance because I was taking that microphone technique course by a person who was the director of Sailor Moon, but she didn't tell me that. So yeah, I mean, talk about right place, right time. I think that's kind of how this career goes. You set yourself up for trying to do the best you can, but you don't really know who you're working with. So it's always a lesson too, is be real kind to people because you don't know who they're going to be one day. And maybe that person is going to be somebody who will give you that break you've been looking for. And I would certainly say that was my break, if I had one at all. Yeah, go ahead.
How much did you know about anime prior to doing Tuxedo Mask?
None whatsoever. And I would say I could probably speak for almost the entire cast. None of us did. And that was what was kind of such an interesting growth period through this time of voicing the job and then seeing it go on air on YTV at the time. And then, yeah, we really didn't have an idea because Dragon Ball Z, you have to remember, was kind of about the same time, and I think for all of us it was a bit shocking because we didn't know much. And my agent at the time, this guy Steve Young, awesome guy, he calls me one day and he says, "Hey, do you want to go to an anime con?" And I'm like, "I don't know what you're talking about." He's like, "No, I think it's like one of those convention things, when people like." And here's the weird thing: they didn't really dress up then. There was no cosplay. It wasn't really cosplay us, but everybody congregated and was still kind of doing it. And it was and I said, "Well, I don't know." And he goes, "Well, actually, they want to fly you out." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, are you serious?" He says, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." I said, "Well, Steve, do you think they could fly both of us out?" And he's like, "I don't know, I'll check." So he calls back a few minutes later, and Steve goes, "Guess what? We're going to San Jose, California." So I think it was like 1996, and I go to San Jose, California to this convention, never been to one. We go there, and there was really not a lot of cosplay. And in fact, it was flipped. All the people were kind of dressed like me, and the cosplay people were like, "Ugh, what are you dressing like that for?" And then we get into this place, tons of people, and I had no idea that it was going to be like this. And of course, I see, then you would see artwork, and you would see they would show a lot of like the anime and manga, stuff on the screen. I'm like, I had no idea this stuff existed at all. And still, going through the years, and I'll get to it in a second, going through the years, I'm so surprised how much creativity is within the anime realm. It is probably the most kind of punk rock style of animation out there, Go ahead.
So, did you also voice Artemis? I think you did.
I did not voice Artemis.
Okay.
No.
Oh, I
No, I only did the iterations of this guy, and I didn't even get to do any bad guys. I always wanted to do some bad guys in this.
You would have been a great insight to like Netright.
I would have loved to, because I mean, come on, who doesn't want to be a bad guy? But yeah, I'd feel taller, I'm sure. But yeah, it was a really interesting experience because what's not typical, like doing dubbing, at least the way we did it, we didn't get to act with any of the other voice actors except for Sailor Moon and Sailor Mars would sometimes go and do sessions together. But how we technically did the voicing of this is a thing called rhythm band. If I'm sure some people know about this, but this is yeah. So what it is, it's really fascinating actually. What they would do is they would have an 8 foot by say 4 foot screen, and it's kind of like professional karaoke. And the producer would take clear 35 millimeter film and actually handwrite our dialogue, and they would broadcast that dialogue on a reel. So it would kind of be like karaoke, follow a bouncing ball, right? But the difference is that we would have multiple characters on this. So my character would be written in black, Sailor Mars would be in red, and what so on. So there would be some differentials, but it would be this scribble of stuff going by you, and you would like kind of get caught up in it. And it was so hard at the beginning. And at first, I was scared because I was not a very good reader. And in fact, when Tracy Moore, the original director for me, said like, "You need to work on your reading. So I want you to get the newspaper sent to you at your house, and I want you to read it aloud to work in your eye-mouth coordination." And I did that for a while, thinking, we'll see, whatever. And I am getting the job. And then it's definitely a case of be careful what you wish for, because now I'm like, "Oh, it's amazing! I just scored a series," and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I have to read." And then you're in the studio and you see the people behind the glass just like that looking at you, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I gotta do it." So it was I would say the first 6 episodes took me a while. It's kind of like learning to drive standard, right? After a while, you start to get into it. Okay, I know what the clutch is doing. I know what's going on. All right, here we go. And then by the 7th or 8th episode, it became a bit more common to me, and I understood how to read it. And it was a really interesting thing because we weren't voicing the roles with each other. We had no balance, right? And it was also really funny too because on that rhythm band, so what would happen is we would have the lines like, "Hey, meatball head," you would say just a gigantic H go by, right? But for things like sword slashes or a punch or this and that, it would just be in brackets or parentheses, and it would say reaction, like reaction. But we would never do. We wouldn't get rehearsals. They said, let's just do a cold pass. Let's just run through your session, and then we'll go back and do pickups for the stuff that kind of flubbed on, and you definitely flub on them. But the reaction ones was hilarious because you'd be in the scene, you'd be doing this and this and that, and all of a sudden you're like, ha ha! But it was actually you were kissing or something, and then like, oh, I'll have to redo that because that does not match up. Yeah, totally. It's exactly.
I've done like one class of ADR.
Yeah, it's totally like ADR.
But there's no beeps.
Exactly. There's no three beep, and I like three beep is really great because because you have beep beep beep, and then you talk, and then you kind of just try to match the embouchure. Yeah, but it was surprising how quickly you got used to it because I was a little worried at first because you have a television screen to look at for the reference picture, you have a script, and then you have this gigantic thing on the wall with a bunch of scribbles on it, and it was. Yeah, I would say it was definitely a skill I didn't know I possessed, but it's one of those ones that you're glad you did when you're in the thick of it. So yeah, anybody? Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say I met Tracy Moore.
You met Tracy Moore? Yeah, she lives in.
Yeah, I met her at this con called Utopia, like before the pandemic happened. Really nice lady.
She's super nice. Well, she was also the voice of the Care Bear, a lot of the Care Bears. Yeah, but like even like the original Care Bears series from Nelvana, like she's the type of person like okay. So there are different levels of voice actors. There are lucky ones, and there are ones that are really skilled, right? Like Mel Blanc and whatever. But Tracy Moore is one of these people that she's kind of like an amusement park in her mind because she is so good. And a lot of times when people do multiple voices, what they'll do is they'll do the first pass as the one character, and then they'll wind back to the start of the show and do the other character. She's the type of person that can do one line in one character and another line. It's kind of like Seth. What's his name from Family Guy? Seth. Thank you. Yeah, he's genius, right? Like that is because he just breaks in his mind and goes to it. Yeah, it's amazing. Either that or he's really crazy, which is probably I think we're all psyched. Everybody's like crazy. But yeah, very interesting process. But talking about like the outreach from Sailor Moon for us, that anime con that I went to in San Jose was kind of the start of it for us because we didn't have the internet and there was no YouTube back then, and so we didn't really realize that the spread of how far this show went. And I've been lucky enough through my time to go as far as Australia, to Malta, and going to Australia was a weird one because it's really far. And I get there to the hotel, and they're like, "Oh yeah, nice to see you. Okay, what are you here for?" I was like, "Oh, I'm here for a convention." Like, "Oh yeah, convention." Like, and yeah, and she goes, "Oh, what do you do?" I'm like, "Oh, I do. It's silly. I did an animation voice a long time ago." I said, "Oh yeah, what's that?" I said, "Sailor Moon." She's like, "Sailor Moon? What?" And like, "What?" And then there's like. It was like they had the same girl working at the front desk, and they all went Sailor Moon, Sailor Moon, Sailor Moon. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so weird. Like I said, you know that show? And I like, and she's like, oh yeah, yeah. Like, oh my gosh, this is so crazy. And then to think that we were so far away and people actually knew the show is so mind-boggling because we don't like as voice actors and specifically our cast in general. We're from most of us are from Toronto or from Canada, and we're pretty humble as far as understanding, where we sit in the whole, entertainment life. And just to have something that we're attached to be so internationally known, and especially now for 30 years, it's like kind of locked in pop culture a bit. Like anytime I see someone downtown wearing her buns like that, it's like, oh, that's Sailor Moon. You know it is. It's so hard not to call her Meatball Head, but yes.
But she's called in the Japanese one. She's called Dumpling Head.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah, and they had to do so much, and also talking about our version versus the original. But the problem was we had so much censorship in the '90s where Canadian television wasn't allowed. Like they weren't even allowed to show a kid with riding a bike without a bike helmet.
Susan Roman said that.
That's right, and I think they had to take my weapon away, so they gave me some shrubbery to throw at people. Yeah, a rose.
Yeah, he had a cane in the original.
Yeah, so something that might hurt versus something that won't. Yeah, go ahead.
Just was wondering if you voiced any other anime characters?
I did Ramna One Half. I did Copycat Ken in that. It was while I was it was right after I did the 2 seasons of Sailor Moon. I was in town here shooting a Warner Brothers series, Police Academy, the series. There's a live action one. And while I was here, one of my friends, I think it was at Ocean. I was the Ocean production company, and they were doing Rama, and I didn't know it at the time. They said, "Do you want to come and do a voice?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." I don't know what it is. And so, same kind of thing where I got to see the character and then do this character. So I really haven't done a lot of anime. I was the voice of Flash Gordon in the '90s at the same time. In fact, that was the weird thing about this era for me is because I went from doing zero voice work and freaking out that I was going to have to read publicly to then I got cast in as Tuxedo Mask, and then a week later I landed Flash Gordon. So all of a sudden I went from having no series to then having 2 series. And so Tuesdays and Thursdays I would record Sailor Moon in the morning and then go across 2 streets to another studio, Studio 306, and do Flash Gordon. And I did that for about 8 or 9 months. And it was I mean, talk about lightning striking, right? Because that just does not happen. And it was a really interesting experience because it was something that I didn't ever see for myself. Because I know a lot of people like they want to be voice actors and that's something they want, and it was a weird thing because it's not something I even thought was a job at the time because it wasn't really well known, you know. Yeah, go ahead.
So I have 2 questions. Are you friends with Susan Roman?
Yes,
Oh, you are.
I travel with her. I've been on about 100 planes with Susan Roman. What's that?
I heard she's super nice.
She is super nice. She's super nice and she's very very talented. Like she was an on-camera actress as well in her earlier days. I think she's also the voice in heavy metal. She's the lead in heavy metal. Yeah, but she's awesome. And she's one of those ones I'm talking about. She's pretty like she has a different level of voice actor ability. Like she really has a skill. She has a very unique voice too. It's a little bit raspy. You know, she talks like this, like I'm Susan Roman, and it's got such a signature. And like there's sometimes when I hear her on other shows, I'm like, oh, that's Susan for sure. It is. And I've been in many planes with her. She doesn't like flying, so every time I fly with her, my leg always have like claw marks in it for after we land. But that's okay.
My second question is, I think I've asked you this, have you seen Pretty Guardian Sailor Moon? If not, would you actually see it? Would you actually watch the series?
I haven't seen it yet. I would watch it. I would watch it with my kids. My kids are just like getting to the age where it's like kind of cool to see.
Teenagers?
Yes, Jess.
Just teenagers.
Jess.
It's, like I said, not bad, not the worst.
Okay.
It's hokey. It's kind of like, it would be compared to the Batman live action series from
Yes.
1960. So it has that hokey acting
Mhm.
for the Pretty Guardian Sailor Moon, that kind of hokey acting.
Right.
Because, like I said, the cast, they had to go through, from what I've seen from the documentary, 400, for the auditions, like 400 auditions.
400 people.
Yeah, 400, like a lot.
Wow.
During the summer of like 2003, so early 2000s.
Yeah.
And so for the 5 actresses, they're all teenagers because that's the 6 adults are teenagers.
Yes.
They picked, all the actresses were like there's 16, 17, and they didn't have a lot of acting experience. So that's why the acting's a little.
But the way I look at it is, I think it's great because it still keeps our brand alive, right? It's pretty interesting because
It is. And also, fun fact: the lady that voices Luna in the Japanese dub voices Luna the plushie doll in Pretty Guardian Sailor Moon. She voices her.
so there's some crossover.
Yeah, and they got a child actress to play Luna as a Sailor Scout. It's really cool. They're plushie dolls.
I gotta say, you guys know your stuff.
They're plushie dolls.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, have you cosplayed as Tuxedo Mask?
Once. Once.
You should do it again.
It was actually a really fun experience. Fan fiction, right? Like some fan fiction writing. There was a guy in Toronto, Adam Ward, who was doing this thing, fan fiction nights, and he approached me at a convention and said, "Hey, would you like to do a fan fiction reading one time?" Like, I don't know what you're talking about. And he said, "No. What we do is we kind of make fun of a thing, but have some, whatever." And he goes, "Would you be into that?" I'm like, "Sure, I'll try it." And he goes, would you be into cosplay? I'm like, I don't know. And then it was like, you know what? Everybody put in their effort, and I thought this would be a really great opportunity to try it. And it was really fun. I think in the story itself, I ended up secretly falling in love with her father. And yeah, it was really weird. It was really strange. And then we just became really good friends. It was a very odd fan fiction, but fun. Yeah.
Do you remember like maybe one line from the fan fiction?
Oh no.
I actually don't. I don't remember. Yeah, no, we read it off sheets, and it was not something I memorized, but it was a really interesting thing. But yeah, I think that was a kind of a fun thing to do. Would I cosplay again? Yes. I would definitely do it. In fact, I was trying to find really quickly. I was trying to find a tuxedo mask for this weekend, but I didn't have time because I got told like last minute there was going to be mask policy. So I thought it would be kind of cool to have a tuxedo for the mask, but I couldn't find it. But apparently the Vans have the new shoes out, right? The Sailor Moon shoes. Yes, I know. I tried to get those too at times, but they didn't have my size. But yeah, it's interesting. It was a very. I mean, obviously, I get the fact that I'm up here talking to you about this for something that I did when I was 20. I was 20. No, I was 19 because it's 30 years. So yeah, I'm almost yeah. So do the math. I'm almost 40. Yes, go ahead.
If Pretty Guardian Sailor Moon was like could be dubbed, would you dub Tuxedo Mask?
I would love to. We were like obviously with the new reboot, we didn't know. We didn't really know a lot when they were doing the reboot. We got to meet the new cast when we were in Los Angeles in 2014 at Anime Expo. We got to meet everybody. But yeah, I think we've been asked the question a lot. Would I have liked to redo the voice? Like yes, because I would get to do it without the censorship, and I would have, you know, it would have been a really cool experience. That being said, it doesn't take away from what we were able to do at the time, and I think we were lucky and like really super fortunate to be able to do what we did when we did it because this is like look at that, I get to meet you people and get to like go downstairs and see so much art that is inspired. I've met so many people who have started their animation careers off of this. I've met some people with stories from this show or because of this show that would either make you really laugh or honestly make you cry for days. How impactful this, for whatever reason, this show did have had on them. Yeah, go ahead.
So what I meant was is like the by Pretty Guardian Sailor Moon, I mean like dub over Tuxedo Mask's line from Pretty Guardian Sailor Moon. Like if it could be dubbed in English, you know
Right.
what I mean?
Sure.
That's what I meant. That would be so cool.
Yeah, it would be cool.
My favorite YouTuber who has 1 million subs. He got inspired by anime and video games. He created his own series, which
Wow.
cost him $1 million. He spent lots of voice acting.
Wow.
Called Meta Runners. Basically, it's kind of inspired by anime. It's not anime, but it's has like anime dating simulator. It's basically if esports rule the world. That's basically the premise of the show. If esports rule the world, it's called Meta Runners. It's a pretty good series.
I like though that people can like now like when we did Sailor Moon, they're like to get something into production and into the masses, way too expensive. Like it was multi-million-dollar ventures. Like the Flash Gordon series was 2.6 million. No, it was 26 million for 13 episodes. Right, so that's a lot of money, and that doesn't mean that didn't even get the eyes or the people seeing it. Same with Sailor Moon. Them being on YTV, that was a lot of money to get to broadcast all that. But the way YouTube is now, and the way that technology has met up with that, it is a perfect storm for people who really want to do their own things. Can become incredibly well known, and also get their art out there. I love how accessible that is. Like talking about that person who created the Maze Runners, is that what you said?
Meta Runners.
Meta Runners.
It's about professional gamers.
Yeah, but it's like that would be, I think that's where it's going next, for sure. I think there's a lot of people in the animation community who are going to do very well because it's just that much more accessible. Yeah, go ahead.
So you mentioned that prior to being voice acting, you were doing some TV acting.
Yeah.
Before Sailor Moon blew up and that was where your career took you, where did you see your acting career going?
I was I had started on stage as a little guy, and I was going across the country. I was like, singing in front of 2,000 people a night as a young guy, and then I got into doing. In my early teens, I was doing series like Road to Avonlea, and a lot of. And back in the '80s, there was a lot of made-for-TV movies up from the states then. So I was doing kind of a lot of that kind of stuff, and I really thought that that's kind of where I'd be spending most of my time. And I did for quite some time actually, and doing kind of bit roles or guest leads on series that came and went. And then the Police Academy series thing that was shot in Vancouver here was pretty great. And then after that, I was kind of needing a little bit of a change because, like anybody in any career, you don't want to feel stagnant. And so when I was doing Police Academy, I started to learn camera, the actual mechanisms of it and lighting. And so instead of going back to my trailer after I was off a scene, I would watch the director of photography, who was a good friend of mine, shoot. And then when I finished that, I went back and I started filmmaking. And that's kind of where I've been a lot too, as I do a lot of camera operation and production stuff. I like to keep going because within this career, like even if you're Tom Cruise or even if you're Chris Pratt or whoever, you can't always be working. Like things are always in production. You shoot something, then it goes to post, then you're not working anymore. And I have the type of personality that I'm much better working, or much better, I think that whole thing, idle hands is the devil's work. And I really love doing stuff. So if I'm not acting, I like to checkerboard it with either production or whatever else. But to answer your question about the type of acting where I thought I'd be a bit more on screen. But the thing is, I've met and worked with a lot of stars. Like that's one thing I have been really lucky in those careers. I've worked with Mr. T. I've worked with like Diane Weiss. I've worked with Samuel L. Jackson. I've worked with like a whole bunch of really very famous people, very well known, and one of the main takeaways for me personally is I have a family. I have three kids, and there's a level of fame that I've been near for over my career, like 35 years I've been in business, something like that. And I've worked with these people, and there is there's a large part of me that doesn't. I wouldn't want that. Not like that. Not so visibly well known. I mean, for people who know anime or Sailor Moon or certain things that I may have done on television, well, it's not a bad thing. But you can still easily go to a supermarket. Let's be honest here. But I do have friends who can't, and there is a reality where you do kind of sell your soul a little bit, and there is. I don't know if I want that. I mean, sure, there's the money side that may outweigh that cost, but yeah, I think losing anonymity, especially in today's world, the way the cell phones are and the internet, like, because I didn't deal with that. Like, only now is Sailor Moon and the cast of Sailor Moon seeing what it would have been like having an internet presence, right? Because it was really YouTube that kind of tapped us on the shoulder in the late 2000s and said, "Hey, Sailor Moon is really popular." And we didn't know it because it kind of just went away after it was aired on YTV, and we were happy. Like we were happy what we did. But then all of a sudden we started going to anime conventions and fan expos, and then start to see that, oh my gosh, there's a lot of people who saw us. Like millions of people, and it's really odd. So it's weird to kind of be famous, sort of. But I think I actually like that because I don't have really any delusions of grandeur. And for people who do, that's great. I don't really know if it suits my personality so much, and especially having a family. I want them to have a real life, and because I don't know if you can in this day and age with the cell phones and the inability to just vacation or do something, or if you have one public freak out, you're not the worst guy in the world. Like I don't know. We're human. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Just yeah.
For the whole like pseudo famous level sort of stuff, when Sailor Moon started getting big, did your agent sort of come back to you and start saying, "You're getting a lot of offers. Do you want to take this role or this role?" Like, did you see a spike in roles offers?
It's funny. have a really funny story about that. So it's not exactly Sailor Moon related, but like at the exact same time, I was doing a lot of commercial stuff, and so it helped because they would say, "Oh, that's the guy from Sailor Moon, and he's also doing commercial work." And I remember there was a casting house that put out there was some type of breakdown for a show, and they were looking for the Toby Proctor type. First time ever, I was like, "That's so cool!" So my agent sent me that, like, "Whoa, this is cool, Toby Proctor type." And then I ended up auditioning for it and not getting it. So even when you think you have it, it's funny too because I went into the room with friends of mine that know me, and they went and saw that on the sheet said Toby Proctor type. So when I walk in, they're like, "Oh, buddy, you're totally gonna get this," and then I don't. It's hilarious. So yeah, but it's I didn't really see the rise that way. Like it's funny, Sailor Moon, because it didn't really get interpolated that way. Only now, actually. Like now that Sailor Moon is kind of a worldwide brand and it's been kind of revamped, now people kind of like as far as like going to conventions and stuff like that, then people are a bit more aware. But I don't know if it really did anything really that much in the inner industry. Yes, but not really like in the public eye. No, no, it doesn't really work like that. Strangely, I wish. Trust me, it'd be great. But I'm also a big believer in what's for you won't go by you. So if it's not mine, it's not meant to be. I'm okay with that. Like it's because you have to understand. Like I will audition. And typically, I still like I'll audition maybe 9 or 10 for 10 projects a week. It may be for voice or it may be on camera and all that stuff. And the thing is, I know that I'm not going to get those 10 things. So, and I may not get one of them. So in the year, if I amortize all of the auditions that I got and I maybe get 10 things, that's great, right? Because otherwise, if you're too hard on yourself, and I know actors and actresses that are hard on themselves, that's a terrible way to live because it's too stressful, right? Like I think it's just because I've done it for so long, I've heard no so many times that when I hear yes, it's just like, wow, because you have to understand the amount of gates that had to open for me to finally get cast, especially for Sailor Moon. Reno Romano was the first Canadian voice actor. He did the first 11 episodes. And if Reno didn't quit, I wouldn't be talking to you right now at all. So, you know what I mean? Like it just goes to show you don't know what is around the corner. So I think just being in the right place, preparing yourself at the right time, and being able to jump when they say jump, that's all you can do. But one thing I would give any advice to take care. Thank you guys. Yeah. Any advice I'd give to anybody starting or wanting to start a career like this or any career is to just, if you put your heart into it and not look at it for the money or not look at it for the fame, because those aren't the reasons why people ultimately get famous. They get famous because they're so good at what they do, and they're good at it because they love it. And that's why I love this type of stuff because it is something I'm genuinely interested in. And the fact that I'm able to do this at all, I know there's a handful of people in North America who get to do what I do. And that is, what do I say? So, I mean, sure, you can walk around all cool and everything, but it's not really my choice. And the fact is I had to be the right look or the right sound. And a lot of the times I'm not the right look or right sound. And so just do your thing and get out of there. Because otherwise you'll go home after every audition or after every self-tape and think, oh, I suck. It's awful. And sure, you have those days, but really the reality is you can only do what you can do. I'm only 5'8". I'm not going to be the leading man, right? Unless Tom Cruise is standing here. So that'd be cool. That would be a bucket list thing, but no big deal. Go for it.
I'm just curious, do you have any sort of merchandise or fan-made or official that you have of your roles that you're just like,
oh, like kind of keepsakes?
Yeah, that's like yours that you look back.
Oh, for sure. Like over the years, I have a bunch of. I mean, obviously a ton of Sailor Moon stuff that was like given to me. I have people who have like original artwork. I save everything. So I have kind of like a shrine of sorts. But I have a lot of figurines, which are really cool. I remember back in the day, Blockbuster had the little miniatures. So at the checkout, you get your Twizzlers and you get your whatever drink, and then and all of a sudden I saw a tuxedo mask. I'm like, yes, it's the coolest. So of course I bought a bunch of those. And then there is a gentleman, Martin Pisu, who's he's big in the anime convention world. He's a very, very kind man, and he has this incredible ability to source really rare items and toys. And every once in a while, when we see him at cons, he always surprises us with stuff that is like, where did you find this? And there was, for the Flash Gordon series, limited series, only ran 1 year. They had a ton, I think it might have been Mattel or Hasbro did the commercial rights. And I never saw any of the toys for this thing. In fact, I didn't know they existed until Martin dropped some on me one day. And I was at a panel and he said, I have to give you something after. And I have a few original, like, I mean, these things are, I don't know if they're worth anything, but for me they are, because like I didn't know these toys existed. It was of my character, and what was really cool is they, a lot of the times back in the day when they were doing cell animation, they would actually have animators animate a likeness of the person doing the voice. So the Flash Gordon guy at the time looked a lot like me, which was a really weird thing to have an action figure of sort of yourself. Of course, he had way better abs, and shoulders and everything else. He's a bit tall. But yeah, it was really cool. So I do actually have a fair amount of stuff, and I like that stuff. And at any con I go to, I always make sure that I go through Artist Alley and see some original works, and try to meet them as well, because their art is only helping me, because they keep our brand alive. It may not be sanctioned, but it doesn't matter. It's such a lovely kind of nod to what it was, And I think this series touched a lot of people for some reason. Yeah, go ahead.
Me?
Oh, that's right. I'll come right back to you. Go for it. Oh boy. Okay, so I have a few things to that. So a few favorites. So a few favorites. First of all, was okay. This is the line, and I'll tell you why it's really important. So it's, "Hey, meatballhead, what are you doing here? I thought for sure you'd be over there with your friends, especially since you're acting like total fools." Now, the reason why that one is important to me is because when I went to audition for Sailor Moon, that was actually the line that they had through my headphones, and they said, "Listen, we want you to emulate this. Don't try to be his voice. We don't want to replace him. We just want a version of him." And that was the actual line that got me Sailor Moon. So for me, that was the key that opened the lock. As far as favorite session, well, there was, this is kind of a weird. I will tie in some real world stuff into it, anyways. One of the favorite sessions it was back in the day. I was wearing a pager because it wasn't cell phones yet, and I had a pager on, and I was recording. I think it was like probably the first 10 episodes, and it was early. It was spring. I know this because I was riding a motorcycle at the time. It was cool because Tuxedo Mask also rode a motorcycle, and it was a Kawasaki Ninja. And I had just finished. I was recording the session, and during a Sailor Moon session, I got a text that said 00000, and what that was my brother telling me that he had a daughter. And so in the middle of actually me reciting a Tuxedo Mask line, I became an uncle. And I stopped. I said, guys, I have to stop for a second. And they said, what is it? I said, I gotta go. My brother just had his baby. And they're like, oh my God, you must go. Nicole was French. She said, go, Toby, go. And so I remember running out of the Sailor Moon session, throwing on my leather jacket and riding on my Tuxedo Mask sport bike to the hospital, and then seeing my niece for the first time and bawling like a baby. And that was my favorite, like, as far as it memorializes a session for me. And then as far as kind of funny moments was the director, or Nicole, the producer, would sometimes fall asleep behind the desk, and you wouldn't know it. And so you would do this whole amazing pass, and you thought you were really good at it, and like, all right, and you try like, all right, how was that? And like you wouldn't hear it because there's the two-way glass, but I'm like, okay, she's asleep. All right, that's great. So then you'd have to like go outside and like, hey Nicole, like, oh what? and yeah, she'd wake up, and then we'd have to retake. So those were kind of my funny like little moments. And I mean, as far as the favorites, my favorite episode is Day of Destiny when they're in the elevator when she realizes that he's Tuxedo Mask. That was cool for me because I was like, come on, let's do this, reveal yourself. So yeah, that was Day of Destiny. I think it's episode 30, maybe.
Oh yeah, I think I've seen that one.
Yeah, I like that one a lot because it's just really cool. Because then from there on, it was like, okay, it's been said. Now we can go forward. So yeah, that was it.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, it was kind of interesting too because I have a lot of friends who watch it on YTV, right? Like PJ Phil or would announce, Sailor Moon's coming up next, this and that. And I have so many people say that they had to either wake up early, it depended on where they lived in the country, but they'd have to like either wake up early or race home from school in time to see it. And it was also back in the setting of the VCR days, so it was like, yeah, make sure that tape is fresh. But yeah, it was such a lucky position to be in. I think that's the best way I can say it. Yeah, go ahead.
For VCR, that's so awesome. I remember my aunt recording some of the episodes of Sailor Moon S like season 3 with when Sailor Uranus and Neptune were introduced.
Yeah.
Fun fact, they're a lesbian couple with.
Right, I know. Before they were just cousins, which
Yeah,
was
it's
weird.
not censorship.
When cousins get together and there's hearts and stuff like that, that's not cousins.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, shouldn't be. Shouldn't be. I'll say that on the record. Shouldn't be. Go ahead. Oh wait.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what the website is called. It's kind of like Fiverr, except it's for voice actors.
Oh, is that voicebank.com? Is that the one I'm thinking, or
I'm not
voice?
really sure. Have you considered doing something like that?
Well, because I'm union, I actually can't work on those sites. I wish I could. But yeah, I know. I think Fiverr. There's stuff like that. There's Fiverr, and then there's I think it's voicebank.net. Is it? Well, Cameo is. Oh, I'd love to do Cameo. Those are fun because I get to like kind of do shout outs for people and whatever. But yes, go ahead.
Yeah, my two questions. Sorry for the interruption. My three questions. Have you seen the original Japanese dub?
Yes, I have.
Do you like it?
Well, when we first watched it, we didn't understand what was going on. We didn't know the story, like we didn't. But it's kind of fun after the fact because a lot of the conventions we go to will have people show us like certain clips and stuff like that. I haven't seen the whole series, but it was really interesting to hear the original Tuxedo Mask
Yeah.
because obviously I'm in no translation to what he did. It was just my version of what they wanted me to do. But it's really neat because I've always said at a lot of these panels that people ask, like, what would be if you had one thing you could do differently, or if you could do that you didn't get to do for Sailor Moon, what would it be? And I would always say I would love to meet the original Tuxedo Mask. And it was only a few days ago that I found out that he's going to be here.
So wait, this is gonna be your first time meeting him?
Yes.
Oh my goodness, I thought you already met him already.
No.
Oh.
So, and both of us, and it was funny because I met his handler this morning in the hotel, and she's like, he's really excited to meet you. I'm like, that's great because I'm excited to meet him. So it's a very, very cool thing.
You're gonna be asking him a lot of super.
It's a bucket list thing for sure. Yeah.
When is the battle plan?
I
2:30.
don't know.
2:30
Is it-
it says it's after yours.
Tomorrow is
No,
that?
today.
Oh, today?
The schedule says it's like after yours. But
I don't know.
after yours.
Let me check with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like,
He's my brains.
yeah. But like,
Big up for Desmond.
but Precious, have you been to the Sailor Moon Cafe in Japan?
Uh-uh.
There's a Sailor Moon
I know.
Cafe.
We heard about it. We went bonkers about it. And it's funny because Linda Valentine, who is one of the voices of Sailor Moon, her daughter, actually lives in Tokyo now. And when she first went over there, and she was billeted by a family, she was like, "My mom is the voice of Sailor Moon." I'm like, what? Like, this is crazy. Like, at first, like, really? Like, no, it really is. And then they actually got to go, I think, to the Sailor Moon Cafe, which that is pretty cool.
I've never been there. I've only been to Tokyo, Japan once.
Yeah.
Back in
No, I'd love to
November.
go to Japan, for sure.
Yeah, I've only been there once.
I think my closest of me getting to go to the Sailor Moon Bistro is going to be getting those vans, right?
And there's like there's supposedly a huge poster of Sailor Moon on the actual moon, illustrated by Naoko Takuchi, the creator of Sailor Moon.
Crazy. I know there was also, I think it was a museum or something that did a big
there was a
exhibit.
museum.
Yeah, apparently there's a massive collection that would have been very cool to see.
I think there's a illustration of Endymion and Serenity.
Crazy.
Yeah. And my third question is, do you know Kirby Morrow?
Do you know what?
He passed away.
I think I have met Kirby, but it was years ago, and it was very brief. Because I had seen the name before, I'm like, I think I met Kirby before. Yeah,
He passed away.
yeah, I heard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was at Anime North, maybe. I think it might have been then. But it's funny because a lot of us, like I said, because we don't get to record with each other, a lot of us don't know each other unless we go to these type of things. So it's as much as these are neat to meet the people who are kind of into this show, it's also neat to meet other workers who are doing this job because, yeah, otherwise we would be like two ships passing the night on the street.
You're like, hey, how's it going? Bye.
Yeah, yeah. Except for they'd be like, bye. I'm like, wait a second, you're a voice actor. Like, no, I'm not.
I actually met him before he passed away, like years ago.
Yeah.
And he was doing like one of those like trial voice acting classes, and I got to be in one of the recording booths, which was super cool. And when I saw him, like I was 5, and I was like, oh my God, it's Kirby Moore. Oh my God, it's Kirby Moore.
It's really cool to be able to if you can get in the booth with people who actually do it, or even like the casting people, like if you're going to get into it, it's really good to kind of at least try to rub elbows with people who are going to be making the decision, or maybe because otherwise they might not ever see you. So if you know what I mean, if you can't ever know these people, or if your agent isn't connected to them, there's no way you're going to get cast, right? Like, yeah. Thanks, buddy. Yeah, so I think that's also it too. Like you have to understand the audition process is really interesting because if you think about it, say you have a demo tape, right, or a demo reel or whatever. Well, when directors are working, they have no time to listen to demo reels, and when they're not working, they really don't want to listen to demo reels, right? So it's this weird juxtaposition because when do you do that? So it's like a hard thing to do to break through that wall. So it really is kind of nepotism is a big thing. It's like it is definitely who you know.
Networking. That's what my friend said.
Absolutely. Well, this business is people. I mean, that is the ultimate currency is people. And that's why I also say, when I said before, like, make sure you're really nice to everybody because you just don't know. I mean, you try to burn not, I mean, listen, there's always going to be tensions in sometimes, but it's really good to try to keep things nice because, you also don't know what people are going through at the time. Like I've worked with, like I was saying, I've worked with certain stars. I've worked with a few stars that were really a few rough around the edges. Most of them are absolute sweethearts, and some of them are kind of tough. And you know what? Maybe it's just because they're having trouble with fame. There's an element of life that's tough about that, and I don't know how well because I don't have that. I don't know. I can't speak on that.
I can't believe you met Mr. T. That's awesome.
Mr. T was awesome, by the way.
Was he super nice?
He is. So here's the thing. So there's actually Nelvana that did all the Care Bears originally, all the animation stuff. That for a while in the 80s they were doing live action stuff. So there was a show called TNT right after he did the Mr. T, or the A-Team, and he came up to Canada and did I think 2 years there. And I did two episodes, separate episodes, but I did the guest star as the young kid on it. It was always a show where like Mr. T would help this like kid who's gone down the wrong path, and like, don't worry, fool, I'll help you. And he was really cool because when I first worked with him, the first episode, I didn't really get to know him too well because I was working with another kid, and we did a bunch of scenes with him, but he was not as accessible just because of the way that the scenes were written. But the second episode that I got to do with him was I was this kid who was kind of having a rough time because I think my dad left and I was a single mom. I had a single mom, and I was kind of doing some bad stuff. And I got to go in the boxing ring with him, and I got to actually go in and box. And it was so cool because I mean, coming from Rocky, and then having to step in the ring with him, and like we shot for about 8 hours that one scene. And the thing is, Mr. T he's big. He's not very tall, but he's like built like a truck, and he's awesome. But at the time, he was discovered by a guy named John G. Avildsen, who was the writer of Rocky, or the producer of Rocky. And he was just a bouncer in Chicago, and he had this really extreme look. And John G. Avildsen was like, you could be somebody. And so he basically ferried him into show business. But at the time when I met Mr. T, he didn't read very well, and so he would travel with his buddies, and his buddies would basically read for him, and then we would keep the cameras rolling, and they would whisper his lines to him, and then he would say them verbatim. And so, and it was a really interesting thing to see as a kid because I didn't read very well either as a young kid. So it was kind of nice to see that I felt like I had opportunity, and I felt like I wasn't alone. And he was very cool about it. And I remember like there would be scenes like, "You ain't fighting, you flailing." What was that? And the guy would whisper to me, "You ain't fighting, you flailing." And then, we'd do the scene, and after the fact, we'd sit down. And I remember one time we were sitting on Lansdowne Avenue in Toronto, and we were in between takes, and people were getting his autograph. And then they started to get quite a lineup. He goes, "All right, everybody." He goes, "I'll give you an autograph, but you have to get little brothers here too." And he was so good because he was very giving with his fame. And in fact, for his days off, he was a really gentle guy. And he would go to Queen's Park, which is right in the center of Toronto. And he just wanted to sit on a park bench. He'd wear a toque so no one would know who he was. And he'd just feed the squirrels. And he loved it. And he loved nature. And he was a really sweet guy. And he was very giving. Like he had he didn't have a bad bone in his body. He's like, who you think he is, that's who he was. And it was a really cool experience to work with him.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very, very neat guy. I definitely like to see him again. And I still actually he signed something for me. I think it was Thanks Little Brother and like Mr. T. And I have that in my bedroom in a frame because it's like, that's a once in a lifetime thing.
Is he live or still alive?
He is alive. Yeah, he had a cancer scare in the 2000s. And I was really quite fearful because it didn't look good. The prognosis did not look good for him at that point. But he pulled through, and he's a pretty great guy. But I think he's like, because of that, he's taken the heat off of his career and doing his just kind of living as you should,
Yeah, like I said, when I met Griffith Morrow at that that free trial of the voice acting
Yes.
lesson, I did do a character voice too,
Mm-hmm.
and then him and I spoke to each other in our characters' voices.
What was your character voice?
I do Zelda fandoms.
Okay.
Zelda.
Do you want to do a line? Go for it.
Oh, really?
Do it.
It sounds weird.
Do it in the mic. Is that mic?
Oh my god.
Does that work? Come on, try it. We're all friends here. Right? Do it. This is your moment. Let's do it.
So I said this to him.
Are you sure you want to be doing that? Snarling and glaring at me? Well, that's too bad. I was planning on helping you, if you were nice.
See? That is cool.
And then I have to have I do the dubs now, and because I'm a huge Zelda fan. Besides, I like Sailor Moon and Legend of Zelda. So.
That takes a lot of guts to do that, by the way. Good for you. You did it.
There's a song from the 80s called Don't Give Up Courage, Nakanai de Yuki, by Shinobu Nakayama. Yeah, so, it takes a lot of courage to do that.
Oh my gosh, good for you.
And I got a lot of comments. I also, I got permission to dub over someone's animations. He does, it's not really for kids. I'm not going to describe it, but it's like 2D animations for video game characters.
That is so cool.
I got written permission from the content creator, and since I dub over his animations, a flock of his fans came to my channel, and all my videos went from like 88 views to one of my videos got 100,000 views.
That's amazing.
No money was made. It's just a lot of views.
Yet, you'll see.
Yeah, if I can.
People are going to see this video, and then you're going to be famous.
And I voiced one of the characters. He also voiced. I did a video of the content creator's video of Mortal Kombat, and he voiced Johnny Cage. Although not the best, I said I still needed some of the voice.
Not the best. Look at this, throwing this guy under the bus.
You did good. And I also voiced Amy Rose, but I don't think my Amy Rose voice is great. But the most video that got the most views on my channel was when I voiced if you played Street Fighter, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's a character named Juri Han that's like an evil version of Chun Li. She's basically a Korean version of her, like more evil, and it's very seductive, like evil voice. And I did it because I listened to her voice and I tried to kind of replicate it, but give it my own. And I got so many positive comments saying, "I love your voice for Juri. Do it again. Do it. Do it."
But you like it. You're good at it.
Yeah, I don't want to do Juri's voice because it's kind of rusty.
That's okay. Well, I think we're actually ending anyways. But yeah, did you have one more question?
It was just more like a line. Tuxedo Mask never said the line of the show, but it's a joke on the internet where he says, "My job here is done."
Yes.
And I would love for you just to
Oh my
voice
God.
that for us. If
Totally.
That's okay?
My job here is done. I'm Tuxedo Mask. Thank you so much for sticking around with me. I really appreciate it. I know there's a lot to see here, and the fact that you took your time with me means a lot to me, and I really thank you very much. Go have fun. Go cause some trouble. That's what I say.
So your job here is done.
I
My
never
job
seen that.
here is done.
Oh, it's
I didn't
my
see that
job here is
meme.
done, and then so he's like, "But you didn't do anything."
Yeah,
And he, like,
yeah, yeah.